Hey everybody, it's John here, and I think I actually may have figured out how to do a video in more than 3 minute increments. So I'm going to utilize YouTube. I actually had to YouTube a video on how to post videos on YouTube. So I think that shows how ancient I am. And the person doing the YouTube video on how to post YouTube videos looked like she was like 15 years old. So that makes me look or feel pretty old for sure. Anyways, first before we get started, I want to thank everybody for the well wishes. I appreciate your understanding. I don't foresee any grading delays this week, but just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the circumstances in case there were any. But should be able to remain on schedule. So, anyways, let's move forward. I want to talk a little bit about the legal system with respect to the healthcare industry. And I was thinking about just the different. I could tell from the first week's discussion, which by the way was fantastic, and I appreciate all the very well-written and thoughtful posts, but there are clearly many people in the healthcare industry in this class, and so you certainly know how highly regulated this industry is. And as I was writing my notes for this discussion, I just kind of off the top of my head thought about all the different federal and some state regulations and rules and legal frameworks that govern the healthcare industry. And just off the top of my head, I thought of HIPAA. Many people brought up HIPAA in this last week's discussion. The Stark Law anti-kickback statute, many Medicare conditions for coverage and conditions of participation, False Claims Act, beneficiary inducement, civil monetary penalty law, Medicaid rules and regulations, state fraud and abuse laws, insurance regulations, privacy rules, patient abandonment rules, state licensure laws, accreditation rules, informed consent laws, Good Samaritan laws, living wills, DNRs, all the end-of-life issues that was very well discussed this past week, antitrust laws with respect to different healthcare facilities, certificate of need laws, which are sort of related to antitrust issues. And then all the facility-specific laws, like for academic medical centers, ambulatory surgery centers, SNFs, critical access hospitals, rural health clinics, federally qualified health centers, etc. FDA laws and regulations with respect to drugs and medical devices and clinical research, and scope of practice issues for various physicians, all kinds of healthcare practitioners, and all the different medical records laws. So very, very highly regulated industry, and there is a legal system both at the state and federal level to account for this and to sort of govern these different healthcare entities and practitioners throughout the various issues that come up. So this week, and I was looking at the discussion question. Sorry if I'm turning my head, but I'm referring to that discussion question. But it asks you to discuss some sort of experience or something in the news where someone wasn't treated with the appropriate standard of care. So we're talking a little bit about negligence or medical malpractice this week, and we did a little bit this last week. But I don't do a lot of litigation. I've been to state court a few times, and early in my legal career, I helped one of the lawyers for the firm I was working for. Was a medical malpractice attorney, and so I did some stuff. I made some court appearances for him, and wrote some briefs for some of his cases. But I was never really highly involved in medical malpractice cases. I'm more of a healthcare regulatory and operations lawyer. But anyways, so I got some sense for what consists of a medical malpractice case, or what it's comprised of, and but a lot of the litigation I do, if you go to page 43 of the textbook that discusses administrative law, that's primarily the litigation that I'm involved in. everything from practitioner disciplinary matters before their respective licensing boards, government reimbursement matters. I do a lot of that. Government licensing matters, and then all kinds of procedures that are governed by statute, regulations, and the rules they're authorized to make. So, but of course, medical malpractice cases are typically litigated in state court, and if you go to page 40 of the text, and then later on, I think in chapter 6, goes into some discussion about negligence as well. There are 4 elements, and so a plaintiff in a medical malpractice case has to prove each of 4 elements by a preponderance of the evidence, which means more likely than not, before a jury, typically before a jury, in order to win that case. And so therefore, and I want to talk about the second one in particular, but all 4 are equally important, because if one is knocked out, then you really don't have a case. The first is you have to demonstrate that there's a professional duty owed to the patient. And so it's typically very easy to show if a patient went in to see a doctor and they had the physician-patient relationship, then that is pretty much established. And then you have to show that there's a breach of that duty. And so that was where some of the discussion from week 1 came from, and we'll continue to discuss this. But to establish a breach, you have to establish what is the standard of care. So I think we all know that just because something goes wrong when you go have a procedure done or you receive some sort of healthcare service, that does not necessarily mean it was negligent. And so there is a standard of care that has to be met based on the geographic location of the facility where the procedure is done, based on the specialty of the provider. Be what may, there is some sort of standard of care. And so this is actually an element that's really highly litigated in medical malpractice cases, because as it came up a couple of times in discussion last week, for example, a lot of the cases that I helped with early in my career were in western Kansas. And so primarily rural hospitals, not a lot of specialists available, really not greatly staffed. And so that standard of care always became an issue. Do you apply a standard of care that's a little bit lower because of those circumstances, because you are in a rural area, not great access to specialists, and the argument is perhaps you don't have access to all the latest and greatest material or studies that a provider at a very urban hospital might have. Of course, the plaintiff is going to argue, no, we all have the internet. We are all, licensed professionals, and so we have access to the same material. You have the access to the same material in, Great Bend, Kansas, that you do in New York City or some other location like that. And so that is really the debate that takes place. What is that standard of care? And did the provider deviate from that standard of care? The third element is you have to show that there's injury, and this is also a highly litigated issue because maybe the plaintiff had pre-existing conditions that contributed to the outcome of the procedure. If they had pre-existing back issues and they went in for some procedure and the outcome was they have more back pain. So, how much of that back pain is attributed to the pre-existing condition of the back? And so that's certainly something that these litigators go back and forth on. And then finally, you have to show that there are damages. And so just because there's injury does not necessarily mean that there are damages, or the damages may not be as much because the plaintiff is really elderly, as opposed to a young kid who had his or her whole life in front of them, where the damages might be more. And so that's another element of negligence that has to be proven, has to be demonstrated, and is certainly something that the lawyers go back and forth on for sure. So anyways, I just want to kind of just bring that up. Standard of care is a big one, particularly for the discussion this week. I am going to continue with I haven't started yet, but we'll continue with the grading for the week, and look forward to another week of great discussion. Appreciate everybody's participation. Again, if you have any questions or want to chat through or discuss through any of the things that you read, or the things that any of the assignments or the discussion questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You have my cell number, you have my email. Any way you want to contact me, feel free to, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So hope you all have a great week, and let me know if you need anything. Thanks. Bye.